Okay, hello everyone. This is Michelle with Chaikin Analytics. Welcome to today's daily workshop session. Just so you know, the webinar has officially started. So please chat yes if you can hear me. Just check to see that you can see the screen and that the audio is coming through clearly. If it's not coming through on your computer, you can always call in with that information has been sent to you as well. So go ahead and use the chat box. You should see it on your GoToMeeting little module over there. Let me know that you can hear me. Additionally, this webinar is being recorded and will be available afterwards in your subscriber sessions. So just so you know, if you want to review anything later or go over anything more in depth, it'll be available for you. Let me introduce myself. I am actually not Joe Bacella, surprisingly. My name is Michelle Greenblatt. I've been working very closely with Joe and Mark as part of our client success team. A little bit of background on me. I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in 2014. Shortly afterwards, I worked at a private investment partnership in New York and then a technology startup in Philadelphia before joining Chaikin. And I've been personally mentored by the great team here. And my main role is centered on ensuring that all of our subscribers succeed with Chaikin. So the purpose of today is really to help you establish a consistent strategy for using Chaikin. We're going to go over a couple of things that we really recommend you do every day. The first of which is analyzing the market overall. Secondly, we want to evaluate some stocks, determine our entry exit points, but kind of to make a long story short before I get too ahead of myself, we want you to establish a consistent discipline strategy so that you can succeed with Chaikin. We'll also go through a tour of all the features of Chaikin Analytics and then host a live Q&A. So throughout this session, if you have questions, feel free to chat them in and we can go over them afterwards. Before I get into analyzing the market, I really want to emphasize using the Resource Center. If you haven't used this already, when you log into Chaikin, in the upper right-hand corner, you should see this symbol. It looks like a stack of books. Click that. Definitely check out the Resource Center. It's going to be your best friend if you're a brand new subscriber. It contains a ton of really useful information, as does our user guide, which explains in depth all the features and formulas that we use. So I highly recommend doing that. Once you go to the Resource Center, you'll also be able to register for our other subscriber sessions. This is a calendar of the subscriber sessions we host. So you'll see that Tuesdays and Thursdays we host a pre-market session at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time where we do an in-depth analysis of the market. If you're more interested in options, looking to learn or go over some potential candidates, we host that every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Of course, our daily workshop is at 2 p.m. Eastern. And if you're a new subscriber, feel free to attend this as many days as you like. There's no limit to how many sessions you can attend. And some of our most successful subscribers find that they like to attend these on a weekly basis to really ensure that they're the most up to date with all of their analysis. And it's also a great opportunity to just ask us questions and have them answered in real time. Finally, last but surely not least, Mondays we have our open forum session with our Chief Market Strategist, John Schlitz. Again, a really great time to ask questions and also hear the perspective of John, who has, over 40 years of Wall Street experience. So he's also an amazing resource. So this is kind of our audience participation segment of the presentation. I would love to hear what your strategy is for investing. This will help me kind of tailor the examples that we go through later, maybe shape the conversation to be more relevant to you. So go ahead and use the chat box to see if you're buying and holding stocks, if you're more interested in options, dividends, and what your desired time horizon is. I see somebody chatted in that they have no volume. Maybe just log out of GoToMeeting and log back in if you're not able to hear. But if you guys can just maybe chat a Y or a yes in to make sure that the audio is working. I just want to make sure everybody can see and hear everything that we're typing and presenting. So go ahead, just for my own peace of mind, if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. Okay, all right, I'll keep going. Thank you for those who have chatted in. this will help really shape today's presentation in terms of some stock examples that we can go through. All right, so let's go to our next step. So I mentioned today the first step in your kind of Chaikin strategy, your step-by-step guide, right? We want to analyze the market overall. It's really crucial to understand the condition of the overall market before you even start looking at stocks. It'll really just give you the best idea of what type of position you should be taking, so bullish or bearish, and what you can expect over the next couple of weeks. And within analyzing the market, we kind of have these 3 steps that we like to go through. You'll find if you're brand new to this that the more you practice it, the more efficient you'll be. It really can be a 15-minute process a day. It just takes a lot of practice. So the first would be understanding the charts, looking at the technicals. And we like to look at the SPY, which is the ETF for the S&P 500. Then we want to look at our spider sector ratings. And finally, we want to put it all together with our market insights that we get from Mark Chaikin. So that's kind of an overview. And now I'm going to go through each of these steps more in depth. So first, we want to assess the technicals. What do we see here? Oh my gosh, this happens every time. I'm just going to not use the mouse because it's one of those smart Apple mouses, and every time I scroll through it, it decides to skip ahead to all the slides. So when we're assessing the technicals, we want to look at a couple of things. First, we have the SPY pulled up here. It's the ETF for the S&P 500, and we want to analyze where we've been and where we're likely to head. So right now, we're trying to figure out if this overall move in the market is legitimate or if it's going to break down like the previous one. And when I say this overall move in the market, I mean this W-shaped bottom, this market correction that we saw last fall and that we recently just saw in the beginning of the year. What is going to tell us that what happened before where it deteriorated is not going to happen once again? And we can look at these technical indicators to lend some support to that. So one would be the Chaikin money flow. Before the market correction and after the market correction of last summer and fall, we saw a sharp increase in money flow and then a sharp decrease, which is really kind of not stable. It's not sustained, and it doesn't lend us support that this is growth that's likely to continue. Whereas the relative rise and continuance of a strong money flow after this market correction lends us support that investors are confident. This is okay, I see people. Okay, nothing on screen. I am sharing screen. All right, well, hopefully everybody is able to see and hear everything. Just so you know, this session is being recorded, so it'll be available to everyone after the session is finished. Once again, the money flow has been really great and sustained, which lends us further confidence that this bullish trend is likely to continue. We see that we're above a long-term trend. Even though this week has been somewhat flat, as you can see here, these individual green lines are price bars that represent one day. So it's been kind of flat and stalled, but we're hoping that the recent earnings reports might act as a catalyst to maybe help us break through this short-term resistance that we've had. When I say support and resistance, you mean, you know, the bottoms and the tops of the fluctuations, right? So we've seen some support levels in the 2000 range for short term, and then resistance in the 2100 range. So what we're trying to watch for is whether or not we can break through this 2100. But I'm also looking at the overbought, oversold indicator, and when the market overall is oversold, that leads us to believe that there's still more room to grow. So that's it for the technicals. Again, if you attend our pre-market session, we can go over this way more in depth. But I highly recommend attending those sessions or at least watching the recordings if you have time. The second aspect of analyzing the market is looking at the power bar differentials, which you can view by clicking ETFs and then clicking spider sectors and then clicking this white triangle with a circle around it. And what this will show you is the respective compositions of each spider sector. So you can see over time if the respective amounts of bulls to bears has increased or decreased. And what we've seen is that over the past 5 to 6 weeks, there have been a significant improvement in the ratio of bulls to bears in most of the sectors. These also might be great places to look for potential growth. So if you
Muted. Unmuted.
Great. Can everyone hear me now? Sound, awesome, awesome. All the yeses. Thank you so much. Great. So GoToMeeting is just playing games with us, unfortunately, today. But all right, so let me just kind of backtrack a little bit, just to review. Apologies for the technical difficulties, but the second step in analyzing the market after we look at the SPY and the technicals on the chart is looking at the power bar differentials for the spider sectors. So we click ETFs, we click this white triangle with the circles, and then we're able to see the power bar differentials, right? So we can see if over time, 5 to 6 weeks, these power bar differentials have improved, and if that's been the case, which it has, it lends further support that this growth will be sustained in the future. And if you like, now thanks to our newest feature, this sector view, you can even drill down further into these sectors that may have had significant improvement in the past week or two as possible areas for growth stocks, right? So if you see that financials is doing particularly well, you might look at the composition of the top holdings within financials as stocks to add to your watch list that might be potential bullish candidates for you. So this sector view is absolutely amazing. We've had really huge positive response to this. And I hope that you'll explore it a little bit on your own as well. Finally, we want to integrate all of our own market analysis with that of Mark Chaikin and John Schlitz. They provide commentary to you every week. Mark sends out his letter every Sunday night, and John sends his out every trading day. The reason why you want to integrate this is Mark and John have so much Wall Street experience and produce these letters for you that really distill a tremendous amount of information into a 1 to 2 page PDF. I find them to be extremely valuable, especially, as I'm still working on evaluating the market on my own. To integrate it with their commentary really solidifies some conclusions that, I felt strongly about, but I got that confirmation from them. So an example of that would be the support and resistance levels that we identified earlier, and also just giving you some advice on where to go from here. As I said, they just identify a tremendous amount of information, whether it's the price of crude oil, what's going on in China. They provide bullish and bearish picks of the week. I highly, highly recommend that you read these. They're tremendous resources and can really make a difference in terms of your investing. All right, so that's for analyzing the market. As I said, it's really important to determine your overall outlook of the market and where it's headed before you even start looking at stocks. And I think, we can mostly agree that there's reason to believe that this growth is likely to continue. Definitely some bullish indicators for the future. So we might look for some bullish stocks. But before we do that, we want to just determine how to analyze a stock, period. The first step is going to be qualifying a stock, okay? Is it worth looking at in the first place? And the second step would be determining your entry and exit points. So if you've developed a good list of potential candidates, you want to make sure that you get in at the right time. So we are going to do that now. So first, in the qualifying aspect of, do you even want to be involved in the stock in the first place, we like to look at this document called the Finding Long and Short Ideas document. This is going to give you almost a checklist, right? 5 check boxes to see if a stock is going to be a good bullish candidate or a good bearish candidate. So in the classic bulls, the first 2 factors we like to look at are whether or not it's bullishly rated or very bullishly rated with persistent green, persistent meaning 1 to 3 weeks. And we also want it to be above a rising long-term trend. And then with bears, we'd want the opposite, right? A bearish or a very bearish rating with persistent red, and for it to be below a long-term trend. When it comes to timing, in addition to the overbought, oversold indicator, and I'm going to go through some examples shortly, we also want to look at the other technical indicators on the chart, such as money flow, relative strength, and the industry group. This is all provided for you in your one Chaikin chart, and we're going to go through some examples and see how we would analyze it based on these criteria. But I highly recommend giving this Finding Long and Short Ideas document a look. It's available for you in the Resource Center. Tremendous resource for you. Something to keep in mind before we analyze the stock are these Wyckoff charts. So more often than not, as I'm sure most of you know, growth does not always look like a simple bell curve upwards. In fact, it's quite the opposite. More often than not, we have accumulation and breakouts, but we also have some breakdowns, right? So we might see low points, high points, but the point here is we have a pattern, right, of higher high points and higher low points. So overall there's growth, but it's just important to keep this in mind. If you say invested in a classic bullish candidate and it went down in the short term, to not be afraid that it's following this pattern and to recognize this pattern when you see it. Quick note on the stock screener, in addition to the workspace and sectors tabs, this is going to be an amazing resource for you in terms of finding classic bulls and classic bears. And what you'll see is the criteria that you put into the screener very closely relates to the checklist that you had on the Finding Longs and Shorts document. So you could look at very bullish, oversold, that gets back to our timing, the relative strength is strong, and you might keep your global filter settings on. That's this blue funnel here. The global filter settings, if you want to not analyze stocks that are below certain levels of price, liquidity, and capitalization, then you can filter those out. I usually keep mine off just because I want to analyze all the stocks possible. But the point is, with using the screener, it's going to do a lot of the work for you in finding those great candidates. And then you can just analyze that entire list by either saving the list as a whole or actually just clicking results, and you can analyze them in the workspace. All right, so let's get into some examples. So what do we see here with Accenture ACN? The first two criteria we looked at for qualifying a stock are if it's very bullish or bullishly rated, and we have that here, so it's very bullish, and we want it to be above a rising long-term trend. So I want you to look on this list. It might be a little bit overwhelming if you're new to this, but the long-term trend line is this orange line we see here. It's a 200-day double exponential moving average. And just for your reference, the other lines on the chart, these white dotted lines, the top and bottom are Chaikin bands. They're very similar to Keltner channels or Bollinger bands. They're basically measuring volatility. This middle white dotted line is going to be a 21-day exponential moving average. And as we discussed earlier, these green vertical lines each represent 1 day, and the price changes. So in terms of qualifying the stock, ACN looks pretty good. Let's see about the other criteria. We had strong Chaikin money flow, which we see. It's pretty persistent. Strong relative strength versus the SPY, which we also have sustained over a long period of time. And a strong industry group. Of the 5 criteria, this is probably the least important of all. But it's still worth considering. And you can also analyze this in the screener by changing your stock universe to strong industries as opposed to the Russell 3000. So overall, ACN is something that you might add to your watch list, keep an eye on. You always want to make sure that you're entering a stock when it's oversold as opposed to overbought. This overbought, oversold indicator is an 100-point scale, but these 30 and 70 dotted lines are placed there for your reference. But if you actually click each individual price bar, it'll show you the exact value of overbought, oversold. The reason you want to pay such close attention to this is if you look in the past, the fluctuations of overbought, oversold usually correspond to fluctuations in price, right? So it's less expensive when it's oversold and it's more expensive when it's overbought. Another example of a classic bull, we have THO Thor Industries here. Again, something that's oversold. It's triggered a signal here, money flow buy. Just a word on signals. A really common question that we get is which signal is best? Which one should I pay attention to the most? And I think before even considering that, it's important to know that signals are really more a call to attention rather than a call to action. So that just means if you're already forming a really strong conclusion about a stock and it triggers a signal, that should act as a validation piece for you, a confirmation of where you thought the stock was already going, but shouldn't necessarily be the sole factor in determining whether or not you enter or exit a position. Your timing is also really, really key. So this is just reviewing, the same criteria, and we don't need to go through it again because it's that same checklist. But as you saw earlier, if you use the screener to look at a couple different stocks, this is going to be the most consistent way to identify which would be good candidates versus ones that you might want to wait a little bit on. As far as bearish stocks, you want to approach it the same way and recognize that that Wyckoff chart is a much more common pattern of, I guess, breakdown as opposed to accumulation, that it'll be a pattern of lower highs and lower lows as opposed to a smooth bell curve down. An important note, and even just looking for bearish stocks, if you're looking to short a stock or buy a put option, it's generally a good practice to go with the direction of the market. The common saying is that a rising tide raises all ships. And there's definitely some truth to that, that if the market has generally been doing well and there's a lot of indications that that growth is likely to continue, it might make you think twice about picking a bearish candidate. That said, it really depends on the stock. So let's just review the best practices for looking for a classic bear. So as we said in that buying longs and shorts document, we want to go through these 5 criteria or 5 check boxes, and we're looking at Baker Hughes, so BHI. We see this very bearishly rated with persistent red. So you can see down here on the power gauge at the bottom, it's been persistently bearish. It's below a falling long-term trend line. And it also has weak Chaikin money flow, weak relative strength, and a weak industry group. However, the industry group is kind of strong. The money flow is a little bit strong, but let's keep in mind the past performance. And if you wanted to open up a bearish position in this type of stock, you might want to make sure that you wait until it gets overbought, so that you're entering in at a higher price, so that there's more room for it to decrease. So whether or not Baker Hughes might be the best bearish candidate, it's hard to say. But generally, you want the stock to most closely align with any of these criteria. Now I'm just going to go through a quick tour of all the features. A quick tip, if you're new to Chaikin, I would just highly recommend clicking around in the platform as many things as possible. You can't break it. So just you might find out something that you didn't know before, but these are all the basic features, and I'll just go through them quickly before we host our Q&A. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to chat them in so that I can address them after we're done with the tour. So first, in order to search for stocks and ETFs, just go to the upper left-hand corner, that white search bar. You can type in the ticker symbol or the name of the company, and you'll be able to view the chart and also add it to your watch list. Once you search that symbol, you'll see that a plus sign appears. If you click that plus sign, you can add it to your watch list. If you want to create a watch list, which again, I highly recommend doing, if you save a list from the screener, anything like that, simply click New List, and you can save different screens. So I have a list of classic bulls that I screened for last week, and I just put classic bulls, 4, 8, and I was able to save it and then kind of check on the progress. So create as many watch lists as you like, and definitely monitor them over time. We spoke about this earlier in the screener, but it's also available in the workspace. This is your global filter settings. As I mentioned, you can adjust for price, liquidity, capitalization. If you say, I really don't want to look at any stocks that are below $8 in price, they're penny stocks, might be volatile, you can filter out for them if you'd like. And just so you know, if the icon, the funnel icon that is highlighted here, if it appears in blue, that means that the filter is activated. If it appears in gray, then it means that it is not. right next to the global filter settings, you'll see the alert settings. So if you're looking at a given spider sector or a given watch list, you'll be able to see.
Muted. Unmuted.
All right, I was very mindful to make sure that you can still hear my sound. So for filters and alerts, you'll be able to see which stocks in a given list have triggered any type of signal or alert. So if they're reporting earnings soon or they triggered a buy signal, simply click this bell-shaped icon here, and you'll be able to see whether or not they have triggered an alert. Sorry about that. Next, in order to see those buy and sell signals on the chart, you'll be able to just click that green triangle and red triangle, and you can select which type of signal you'd like to view. Another common question that we get is, how can you view all the signals? And you can't. You can only view one signal at a time. If you could just imagine, they all look like red and green triangles, so you wouldn't be able to discern which was an oversold buy signal versus a relative strength buy signal. So you can view one signal at a time, but you'll be able to see over a 1 or 5 year time frame how many times a particular equity triggered that signal, which can be really helpful in determining your future outlook, right? So if, over the 5-year performance of VLO, every time it triggered an oversold buy signal and then it improved, that might lend you, some clues about how it's likely to perform in the future if it again triggers an oversold buy signal. But it's always important to pay attention to the other technical indicators on the chart as well. In order to see the full power gauge rating ribbon, so say you're looking at a particular stock and you want to see how that stock kind of breaks down in terms of all the factors that the Chaikin power gauge analyzes, just click this white triangle with a circle around it in the upper right-hand corner of the chart. And then you'll be able to see a breakdown. You can see the yields, the PE. If you click these plus signs to the left of financials, earnings, technicals, experts, you'll be able to see each individual category. So if in experts, the analyst rating trend is particularly high and you place a high degree of importance on that type of factor, that might be something to look at. Earnings, one of our other latest updates that we're very excited about. In order to see earnings on the chart, simply click the EPS icon to the right of the options button, and then click the checkbox that says show earnings on chart. Some people who have had trouble viewing the EPS icon on their header, it's usually because the browser is zoomed in too much. If it doesn't appear next to options, whatever browser you're using, just click view and then zoom out a couple times and it should appear. For whatever reason, we need a certain amount of pixel size or viewing size in the window for it to appear. So if that's a problem, definitely try that and it should be fixed. Last but not least, we definitely don't talk about this as much as we should, but this is another amazing resource for you. The portfolio health checks and the power gauge reports. A portfolio health check is going to give you kind of an evaluation of a given list. So if you have, your My Stocks user list and that's all the stocks in your portfolio, or if you have a watch list of candidates that you're looking at, you can simply generate a portfolio health check to evaluate how that given list is doing, and here's what it looks like. So they'll give you a differential of how many bulls, neutrals, and bears respectively you have in your portfolio, which ones are up, which ones are down, and some further in-depth analysis of why it might be performing that way. You can save these as a PDF, you can print them out, you can share them. If you're a professional advisor, this might be a really great way to have a simple way for your clients to understand how their portfolio is doing. We go even further in depth with our power gauge reports, which will do the same thing that a portfolio health check's doing, except for an individual equity. So if you see that Netflix is rated very bearishly by the Chaikin power gauge and you want to know why, this is going to give you a much more in-depth explanation of why we've rated it that way. So you can see that the charts, some plain English explanations, which I find very helpful. Again, these can also be saved as PDFs, shared, printed out. Definitely take advantage of these. They'll be really helpful in explaining things for you. And finally, we mentioned this at the beginning of the presentation, but the Resource Center is going to be your best friend. Click the stack of books and then Resource Center, and you'll be able to access everything. And actually to the left of this light bulb icon is where you can access all of our market insights. So those articles that Mark publishes, as well as morning insights that John publishes, they get emailed to you, but in case they get lost somewhere in your inbox and you want to access them quickly, just click that light bulb icon and then click the stack of books icon, as I said, to get all sorts of great information like the finding longs and shorts document, the power gauge factor reference sheet if you want to see how each factor is calculated. We have a formula sheet for that. Tremendous amount of information, and I highly recommend you explore it on your own. This is what it looks like, and I just mentioned this, the finding longs and shorts within Chaikin, understanding Chaikin money flow, our desktop user guide, how to schedule future sessions if you want to attend pre-market, one-on-ones, options, everything there. Go to the Chaikin resources page. Highly recommend it. I will stop giving you a tirade on that now. But thank you everyone for listening. I'm going to switch back to the Chaikin platform. Give me a moment. Cool. So I have Chaikin open and I'm going to go through some questions. Again, if you have any questions or things you'd like to look at, go ahead and use the chat box. Great. Matt, I see you asked a lot of questions. Actually, a couple people asked this. If there's any drawing tools on the platform, great question. Unfortunately, we do not have drawing tools yet. If you've seen drawing tools in the past, that's just because our onboard workshop, we present through PowerPoint and you're able in presentation mode to draw on the screen. We don't have them in Chaikin yet, but we are always in conversation with our technology and product development team, and that's definitely a feature that's on our list of things we hope to add soon. Great. For the classic bulls illustration, would you be entering at 0.5 or is the train left the station? Cool. So what stock were we looking at? That was Accenture, right? ACN. So the question was, would we be, I guess, entering now or has the train left the station, right? And when we talk about timing for classic bulls, it's always important to keep in mind the overbought, oversold indicator. Also the industry, things like utilities, I know have been performing exceptionally well over the past a couple weeks, but you also want to be mindful about whether or not that type of industry is kind of overextended, right? If it's kind of reached its peak and then it's, headed downwards. An important thing that I didn't mention earlier, the Chaikin power gauge is really a forward-looking measure, right? So we're rating this bullishly because we're saying that it's likely to outperform the market overall over the next 1 to 6 months. So if it's bullish now, we're saying, the future for this looks good. It's likely to outperform. The money flow looks strong. It's above a rising long-term trend. One thing that I would be mindful of are these volatility bands. The way to use volatility bands, usually when a stock has reached the top volatility band, it's usually kind of primed for a dip down, whereas the closer it gets to that bottom volatility band, the more likely it is to dip back up again. So we can kind of see that here, these fluctuations, right? Bottom band dipping back up, top band kind of dipping back down. So be mindful of both the Chaikin bands, the overbought, oversold indicator, and the Chaikin power gauge rating, and be mindful of the fact that this is a very forward-looking measure. So, if the kind of odds are stacked in its favor, where you've evaluated it on the classic bull criteria and you've determined your timing, those are the really most key things to look at. What else? Excuse me. Not using fundamentals. Okay, so that's a good question about fundamental analysis versus technical analysis. Chaikin is a very technical tool, but I think it's important to consider that we do take into account some somewhat like fundamental, I would say, categories, particularly things like analyst rating trend, insider activity. Um, it is a more technical tool, and I would say to look at the technicals on the chart and just recognize that the power gauge rating overall is already kind of doing the work for you in terms of determining the measurements on those technical indicators. And just so you know, this is another common question that we always get about short interest, right? If it's rated bullishly versus if it's rated bearishly on short interest. If it's rated bullishly, basically means not a lot of people are shorting the stock. If it's rated bearishly in the red, it means that a lot of people are shorting the stock. All the factors within the power gauge are kind of normalized so that green means good and red means bad. That's kind of an oversimplified way to say it, but people do ask that question a lot about short interest, so I just wanted to point it out for you. What else? Popular signals. That's also a great question. I think that, again, it's important to keep in mind that signals are really truly more calls to attention rather than calls to action. But the most common signals that I look at are usually the oversold buy and overbought sell signals. And as I said, you would just click here and then select this to see. And if you wanted to see over a 5-year time frame, simply to the left here, you could click over 5 years, right? And if you want to analyze, the individual price bars, you would click this crosshairs button. So I can select between different days. So let's see, January 31st of 2014, Accenture triggered an oversold buy signal as indicated by this green triangle here. It was bullishly rated. It was oversold. Money flow was strong. The relative strength was not great. So you would see, okay, you could have gotten in here, but it took a while for it to come back up. But that, again, that's over a 5-year time frame. So I would say oversold, buy, overbought, sell. You can also account for that in your screener. So like, say I wanted to do a screen, I have the Russell 3000 here. I might do strong industries because that was in our checklist, right, of finding longs and shorts. I might try money flow is strong, relative strength is strong. I'm actually pretty much just going by the criteria in the finding longs and shorts document, but let's just try and do a screen here. Cool. So this is just an example. I know I went through this a little bit quickly, but using the screener is also going to do a lot of the work for you so that you have to pay less attention to signals and more attention to those like key factors that are going to be crucial for good candidates. Actually, somebody in the office made a really good analogy for the stock screener. It's kind of like cooking, right? You want to make sure that you have the best ingredients to make the best, most delicious meal possible. So the equivalent of putting in really good criteria into the screener, and this is, a good jumping off point if you're just getting started with it. The key is just making sure that the ingredients are right, and then you get a list that you can generate. And as I said, you can save this whole list. So I might save this as bulls, from April 15th. And I would just click continue. Just wait a moment. And now I can see in my watch list, that list that I just generated appears here. And I can look at all of these stocks. So I have 12 stocks here. It's a pretty manageable number of stocks to analyze. I don't want to look at the signals right now. But what I would do is save this watch list and look at these stocks over the next couple of days to see how they're performing. If all the criteria line up and it's oversold, it seems like a good time, and I've done my research. This is a really great way to kind of get started. So hopefully that's helpful. Are there any other questions? ETF stocks. Okay. So some turnarounds. Actually, you know what I would do? Instead of in the screener, Matt, the question that you asked, I actually didn't talk about this before, but our hot lists are one of the most underutilized and kind of like hidden treasures, I would say, of Chaikin, where we're doing a lot of the work for you to find those kind of bullish turnarounds. So what you can see here in our hot list, we have all different types of categories. These are pre-created lists, right? So we've kind of put the screener criteria in for you, and we update these very regularly. So you can see for this week, okay, which ones have had bullish turnarounds, which ones might be, at almost the cusp, right, where there's room for growth. And there's 29 stocks here. You might want to narrow this down a little bit more, but this is a great kind of breeding ground to look for ideas. If you want to look at specific factors or indicators, I know you mentioned money flow. So you might say money flow persistency the strongest. So ones that have had really persistent, strong money flow would be listed in this indicator hot list under money flow persistency. You might look at turn bullish this week. This kind of gets back to my point earlier of just clicking as many things on the platform as possible. You can't break it. So just keep clicking stuff, keep looking around, keep asking questions, and maintain your curiosity. The more you play with it, the more efficient you'll become and the better use you'll get out of it. So I would say that the hot list first, but if you wanted to look in the screener, if you wanted to maybe add, instead of oversold here, I might just want to look at signals. So you could click under signals. Signal had a money flow buy. Oh, we have no results here. That's probably because I'm in strong industries. If you get no results and you still want to keep that criteria, try looking at a bigger stock universe. You might get some. Cool. So this generated 2 stocks. In case you don't want to save that whole list, say you only want to look at these 2, just click results while you're in the screener. It'll bring you immediately back to the workspace, and you can switch between these 2 stocks and look at them. So hopefully that's helpful. Any other questions before I wrap up? Good question about candlesticks. We don't have candlesticks yet. I know a lot of people ask about those. Unfortunately, they are not yet available in our platform, but I would just recommend, again, clicking this crosshairs button, and you can see more details on each individual price bar. That's kind of on our list of things that we want to add for the technology and product development team. Oh, you're welcome. All right, this is our last call for questions. I'm scrolling back to see if I got any other things. Again, apologies for those technological difficulties in the beginning. We've just been having internet problems all day. It's been a mess, but I'm glad that it's been working for most of the session. All right. I do not see anything else. Thank you all for attending. I hope you enjoyed today's session. As I said, explore on your own, go to the Resource Center, register for more sessions. You can attend as many as you like. We're here as a resource for you. We want you to succeed. This is our entire role here. And yeah, so we hope to see you soon next week on any of our other subscriber sessions. And I hope you all have a lovely weekend. All right. Thank you so much.